When we look at the idea of modern leadership, now the reason I included that bit there for you to watch that is really to give you the example of where everything started. I could have started with that. That's wonderfully, beautifully colorful. What we've seen happen over years is that school structures changed or had to change. And we now have this concept of distributed leadership, where leadership isn't vested in a single individual, but is shared across an organization. And it started, interestingly enough, guys, in schools. Now, I won't ask about schools yet, but I'm going to share some information about the realities of school now. In 1940, and if I've told you the story, please tell me so I don't repeat myself. A, a report was submitted to the US Congress, and in that report, the key problems that were being encountered or were encountered at school were obviously sent through for consideration. So in 1940, the key problems were students not walking in line, students talking out of turn, students not putting their hands up to ask questions in class, and then some of the very serious stuff. Okay, guys, students chewing gum and students being noisy in classrooms and in corridors when they're walking. That was 1940. In 1990, the same report was sent through to Congress. The main problems in 1990 was rape and attempted rape, murder and attempted murder, was weapons, carrying weapons, was intimidation, was threats, etc. So in 50 years, we went from being concerned about people not putting up their hands or talking out of turn to being concerned that you would be murdered at school. Now, that is a transition period of 50 years. Now, we are officially 16 years away from 2040. What do you think the 2040 report would say? What do you think that? Sorry, who was shocked at those stats and those comments? I say it so matter of factly. Sorry. Absolutely, Charles. Any comments about the change in concerns at schools in America? What do you think the report in 2040 would say if the transition in 50 years was murder and attempted murder from talking out of turn and not walking in line? Do you think it'll improve? Yeah, well, Tanya, there's so many reasons that we can put it that. The reality, though, these are what the kind of circumstances that we face at school. I mean, if we look at schools in South Africa, that young 16-year-old girl, Devonay Nell, getting murdered by a boy who previously raped an 11-year-old girl, getting stabbed to death in a storeroom, people killing each other, principals getting shot, teachers getting shot. The world has changed. Now, to try and counteract that, what schools have done is they've introduced the set of leadership layers that hopefully would be able to counter, to identify, to it's very tragic. it's incredibly tragic. Yeah, I think yeah, respect has gone out the window. Again, it's a real problem. Now, obviously, I can't comment about that. My boy's going to an all boys school, and I think a lot of that stuff won't happen there. But I think there are some moments at that school that really questionable things happen. Can I see who here was a prefect at school? Anyone a prefect? Riyasat, were you a prefect? Okay. Who else was a prefect at school? Oh, it was called SRC. What school is that, Charles? Walter, very impressive. Okay, very different. Redham. Okay, no, that makes sense. That does make sense. Redham in Cape Town, Cape Town, I'm assuming. Yeah, it's also a varsity college or IIE thing. Yeah. No other prefects here. Oh gosh, I have the B class tonight, clearly. Oh gosh, yes, go and report me. So I am going to get fired after this, guys. So yeah, no, I could imagine so, Seaboy, because you're in my nightmare. So why would things change? I really am looking to get reported. So if we think of the traditional school, you had the you had the principal at the top, and then you would have the vice principal, and then you'd have the school. And in those days, principals looked in a particular way. I always remember principal at school 17. Scottish. Okay, now this is the kind of view that when oh my gosh, why is this now irritating me? This is the kind of view that I have of a principal back then. You know, tie suit and in charge, big desk, etc. If you look at some of the other pictures that are there, yeah, and I'm not picking on anyone, it's just arbitrary, a very specific look at schools. Now, I certainly think that schools look very, very different nowadays, and I think principals look a bit different to those days. Okay, very cool, Sina. Very, very cool. So, what we see in schools now, guys, is that you still will have the principal. Oh yeah, DHS and college. How similar are DHS and college? Where was DHS still old school?
Yes, sir. Very, very much old school and stuck
Because
in
DHS, it is a boys'
tradition.
school, hey?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, don't tell me
Okay,
a
yeah.
college boy, sir.
It's a college boy, huh?
You went to a girls'
My kid
school,
is telling me to fail
sir.
you now because you DHS, so I'll have to pay attention to him. No, I'm not. Guys, I'm embarrassingly having to admit, if you know anything about the Natal South Coast, I went to Kisbach Hoër School. Yeah, this was a long, long time ago because I think I'm the age of your grandparents on average at this stage. So, in terms of modern school structures, what you have is the principal. We also now see that they'll have a senior deputy principal, and then you'll have a number of other senior managers. And what we see is from there, they break it down to heads of department, head of departments. They break it down to heads of schools. At where my kid is, they have house leaders. They've got different elements of people who look after different aspects of the house, and then you have prefects, etc. So what we see happen is this idea of distributed leadership. because the problems at school are so significant and have the potential to be so significant that we have to find a new way of managing schools. And it's through this distributed leadership approach. In terms of house committees and those kinds of things, it is very much seen that kind of distributed leadership. Where I'm at Varsity College, they're class representatives, etc. But the distribution is not that significant. And it's become the model for a lot of organizations because in a world where insanity is the reality, you cannot expect one person, i.e., the CEO, to cater for everything that happens in the organization and the environment. So we see this kind of distributed leadership. Who remembers who was at school? Yeah, most of you would have been at school about 4 years ago. Is that a fair comment? Or 5 years ago? So I would imagine most of you finished in about 2018, 2019. 8 years ago. But yeah, no, you're over the hill. 8 years ago. It makes you a baby still. Anastasia, 2013, Riasat, matriculated 2019. Mark, 30 years ago. Yeah. I think mine might be even, no, mine's way more than yours. I can promise you that. Yeah, no, I would imagine so, boy. I think I'm about 4 times your age still. You're still a baby. Don't worry about it. You're 26. You are definitely very young still. Well, very young. Gerardo, 9 years ago. So some of you are still in your 20s. This irritates me. Oh, Tanya, thank goodness. Oh, but 1999 is only 25 years ago. Feel old yet, Tanya? Guys, I think the reality is if you think back to your school structures, Bill, do you want to tell me about? Yeah, no, well, I feel very sad now. Yeah, you guys are babies compared to me. I think if you add all your ages together, you'll still be younger than I am. Bill, you want to tell us about your school structure? And I know that it's still old style, but Cam's not here, boy, and I've got extra stones tonight to lob at people. The modern school structures are very, very different, guys. It is really populated by leadership levels throughout. Oh dear gosh, Cam is here. Cam, what's wrong, boyo? Why do you feel sad? Have we not been horrible enough to you yet? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, sir, you said I'm
Apparently
not
they
here. I'm here the whole time.
is it. I'm so sorry, Boya. You need to report me, Boya, not paying enough attention. The only stuff you hear from me will be bad stuff. So, well, can I just say, maybe, oh my gosh, are you seriously a George Campbell person, Cam?
No, 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 no. I'm a Northwood boy. I'm not a faulty person like these
Northwood,
DHB people
okay,
talking about.
same thing. Oh my gosh, all these people from KwaZulu-Natal. Mind you, I've just told everyone that I went to Kiswag Hoërskool, so I must just keep quiet. I think the reality is, guys, that if we look at modern school structures, they populate everywhere. And I think when we look at comparing traditional leadership, the one rule we see is that you had the the link between a leader being a manager, but in that leader manager you have a lot of leadership, a lot of influence, and a lot of power vested. And the simple truth is when you when you look at that kind of traditional leadership, it always created that impression of someone large and in charge. And sadly, it often suggested that it was a guy, that it was a man in charge. And then I think also, we have those traditional definitions. And part of that is the division of labor, where you have specialists in different areas in the organization. You don't have versatilists. And then the real concern, that cult of exceptionality. I think often really powerful leaders are revered as exceptional when they're not exceptional. I think Donald Trump plays into that cult of exceptionality. I think there are a lot of those kinds of individuals that see themselves a cut above the rest. And they can give us clear standards. It's about being directive, it is about being traditional in your thinking. So when we look at the idea of a leader, it's this thing. It's that you somehow in a privileged position. Old style principles were like that. People really aspired to be in those kind of positions. To also just say, guys, I mean, when we did that, what career success is, the simple truth is for some people, climbing the ladder and being large and in charge in terms of that privilege that you have as a leader, that is defined as career success. For me, I don't care about titles. I don't care about anything. It's about contributing. I do not want to manage people. I shouldn't say too much about managing people. Guys, and then, yeah, greater, more able, rarer, more exceptional. When Donald Trump looks in the mirror, let me tell you now, that's what Donald Trump sees looking back at him. Is that a fair comment? Here's some guys, and then just in terms of leadership, it's this idea that there's power and influence. In terms of modern organizations, we start distributing power, we start distributing leadership simply because it's impossible for one person to cater for everything that a modern organization throws at you. Who wants to share some of the stories from their school that were quite shocking? Okay, I know most schools you can buy drugs. I think that's a given. Is that a fair comment? Because I obviously go to the school to buy my own. Oh, I can't say that, can I? What are some of the problems in schools in South Africa now, other than the really nasty? Is drugs still a problem? Are drugs still a problem? For some reason, this has stopped working. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm dropping connectivity. Oh, steroids is a real issue. Cyberbullying, Tanya, is a massive issue. Yeah, steroids is a real thing, and it's readily available, and that's the scary part. What other problems? Cyberbullying, normal bullying, but I think cyberbullying. So you can clearly see that the evolution is significant, and you need a lot of people to look after that. So, in terms of what we think of leadership, I think we, in terms of definition, other than this privileged status, I think often what we use the term leader for is to refer to the activities and practices, which matches perfectly with the idea of this. Yeah, matches perfectly with this idea of distributed leadership, because often leadership goes hand in hand with performing certain tasks. And to get certain things done, you need to have some leader in place. So often we see the move towards a distributed leadership approach is often the consequence of the realities of the organization. If we look at leadership and the division of labor, I think one of the biggest challenges of old style organizations is the idea of the production line, that this person's, I don't know which order it goes, this person's outputs becomes that person's inputs, that person's output becomes this person input, etc., etc. The challenge is if there's a bottleneck anywhere, the whole system fails. So we see production lines and the need for production lines being questioned. I know you'll always have production lines, I understand that, but I think production lines themselves belong to a previous age. And the truth is, these modern flat organizations populated by self managed teams is where the focus should be. And then that idea of exceptionality, I think it's incredibly arrogant of a leader to think that his or her presence is what makes an organization successful. If we look at the South African rugby team and the management inside that team, it is proper distributed leadership. It is a sense of cascading the leadership role throughout the entire team. Yes, Rassi is obviously still in charge, but there's so many leadership elements allocated to different people that the truth is that when we see distributed leadership, you immediately see the South African rugby team. And on the basis of the South African rugby team, a really successful organization. So, in terms of that, this idea that leaders are exceptional and responsible for everything that's achieved is a misnomer. It belongs to another era. And then standard based leadership, yeah, again, it's this belief that leaders are in charge of whatever the organization achieves. I think it would be incredibly arrogant of a leader to think that. The truth is, as long as you have the right people in the right place making a contribution, that is what the engine is in terms of creating successes. A leader cannot be the only person responsible for that. So, yeah, we talk about this designer leadership where we can then essentially start cloning leaders, etc. Again, a real issue, and again, the organization not changing. Yeah, and then distributed leadership. It is that idea of everyone being a leader now. And it really is about cascading leadership roles. It is about making the organization light on its feet. It's about empowering people to take decisions. It is about making sure that where decisions are taken, those people who take those decisions actually have the authority. So it is a significant shift away from these supposedly exceptional individuals to having exceptional individuals populating an entire organization. I'm sorry, guys, a modern organization cannot be run by one single individual. It cannot be successful if it's driven by one organization. And if it was, the moment Sear leaves the field, we would then be in trouble. But I think there are so many other leaders in the Springbok side that somebody will take charge at a particular point in time. And I think we see this everywhere. Who works for an organization, and remember what happens here stays here, that still has the supposed exceptional boss thinking that everything depends on him or her and that they're responsible for every success. Anyone worked like that in a place like that? Walter, yeah, you're in government, hey, but Walter, are you in government? Oh gosh, yeah, well, no, private. It sounds so government driven. Yeah, not a pleasant place to be. I really think those individuals need to contact Charles so that you could have a change management program introduced there, boy. Guys, and then in terms of distributed leadership, it really is about the interaction between members of the organization. Yeah, no, I won't spend time talking there. And it's about the situation. Different situations happen at different moments in time, have different beginnings, have different ends, and you will have to have leaders in those, have to have leaders in that place. You cannot have this omnipotent, powerful leader that can be everywhere. And the truth is, I love this term. It is richer, it is more complex, but it allows you to deal with more complex situations. And then just in terms of individual leaders, yeah, again, that idea that people are large and in charge. I think distributed leadership is really about how a number of leaders can combine to create a successful organization. Google, they do it so differently, but they have these, and remember, their structure is executive managers, senior management team, and then the rest self-managed teams. And in those self-managed teams, you have got a team leadership role that rotates. So, depending on the project, depending on the situation, someone else will be a leader. And it is situational, it is context based. I like the idea of a team leader role that moves between different individuals, that rotates. Guys, and then just in terms of distributed leadership, I think it's about interactions. And remember, sometimes those interactions are based around formal teams, sometimes it's informal. It's having a chat to someone from another team, dealing with things in a personal way. Those elements are important in terms of modern organizations because they are relationship based. And then obviously it is the fact that these people are responsible for making a specific product. And sometimes they're responsible for meeting with customers, which in the past would have been done by marketers. But it is the social process, and it really is making an organization more human, making an organization where people feel that it's a good place to be. Yeah, and then also spontaneous collaboration. And again, it's because of the situation, guys. I think certain situations that arise cannot always be sent to some board for a decision. People get together, they deal with the issue, they collaborate on the issue, and they disperse. And the truth is, and I quite like this, guys, it is different from these normal rituals that we have. And the worst example of that come from the 90s, and it's that idea of quality circles. What a dated concept, although they had a role back in the 90s. Organizations don't look like that anymore. But it really is about informal social interactions in terms of building an organization that is better. Guys, and then just where have we seen evidence? There's lots of research. I think for me, it is about the working relationship. I quite like the term partnership. It is not just colleagues, it is we're in this together and we are going to make this fantastic. And then also, just guys, the levels of trust and how people learn from each other and work together and intuitively know what will happen and should happen in an organization. You cannot have that when you have this cult of exceptionality. And then, yeah, I think we also know that practices will replace structure. So when we think of these practices, structure give you a formal guideline of who reports to who. Practices deal with issues as they arrive. It is a far softer and, as I've already said, more humane way of dealing with each other. So if we look at what teams and distributed leadership will give us, respect and trust, collective support. I quite like the idea of protection, where you look after each other's interests. Open communication, a clear vision, whether that's your own sort of mission directed behavior, common values, clear objectives in terms of benefiting the organization and not yourself. And then also people realizing that leaders are everywhere. Can I ask if I had to do a questionnaire and put those on a Likert scale, and I say that and the opening statement is, in my organization, I believe our relationship is based on trust for team members, based on collective. And I said, one is never, and I say five is always. How many of you would be giving a lot of fives? And be honest. If I did a Likert scale, the organization that I work for, or in the organization that I work for, our interactions are based on respect and trust, collective support, and I do a Likert scale, one being never and five being always. How many alwayses would there be? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who of you would score 35 out of 35? Who of you would score 7 out of 35? You can give me an idea, or is it somewhere in the middle? No one's answering, so I'm worrying that I'm not making sense. You're in the middle, Tanya. That's not ideal, hey? It's like being lukewarm. Jess, that is astonishing. 30 is astonishing, Marcus. That is impressive. But who is closer to the 7? Where it's a dog eat dog, stab each other in the back. 20, Gerardo, that's low, hey? I suppose it's, yeah, sorry, Charles. It's, if I did a Likert scale, and the opening statement was, in the organization that I work, our interactions with colleagues are based on this trust and respect, collective support, etc. And then I would say always and never, one is never and five is always, with everything in between. What score would you give your company? Still 5 to 7, boy. That's but
No,
I
sir,
won't
I
ask
meant
what
like
you work.
5 out of 7 of those points, not.
I know, so the maximum is 5. Oh, so it's, you close to about 30. That's impressive.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
impressive. That's very impressive. Okay. Yeah, Tanya, that's unpleasant. Oh, Charles, that's amazing. Yes, I like that. The problem is that when you see the ideal, and unless you experience the ideal, somewhere in the middle, Sibu, I think when you see the ideal and when you experience the ideal, then it becomes this wonderful place to be. Unfortunately, if you live in a place where you're about 10, 15, 20, it just becomes the culture and you used to it. And you just say, well, it's my lot. For me, a job is something that you look forward to. For me, a job is something that gives you energy. Um, oh, absolutely, Charles. Smaller companies, startup companies are very, very much like that. I think for me, you need to keep this slide in mind when you assess your next organization, or when you go about just doing an appreciation of where you are. Guys, and then in terms of collaborative leadership, I think it is important to note that the leader still has a role, because we need the vision, we need the overall standards. But the simple truth is, it is about the people, and this leader knows it. So yes, obviously, we will have the vision and we'll break the vision down so people can understand it. The second one, a leader is still responsible for bringing the talent into the organization. What is the difference between an employee and talent in an organization? What is the difference between referring to your employees as talent versus referring to them as employees? If you're far worse, they call you a worker. What makes talent special? Special. Room for growth, yeah, etc. Yeah, absolutely. For me, the key difference between being able to call staff talent or call them employees, is talent is scarce. When you have people that are scarce in terms of skill, ability, contribution, then you have talent. It's that scarcity. Employees are available everywhere. And I sound a bit awful saying that, but talent is scarce. Not everyone fits into that definition of talent. And when you think of Google and who works for Google, Google has talent that works there. But I think built into talent is hard work. I think it's the contribution. I think sometimes employees don't have the ability. So even if they work hard enough, they're never going to make the contribution that somebody who is talent will make and when they work hard. I don't want to be hard, but employees working harder is nowhere near as talent working harder. Guys, and then just in terms of the way we interact, it's about dialogue. And dialogue means two-way communication. And it's not about I'm in charge and you here to listen, but rather a we are equals, we're in this boat together, we are going to make this work. And it's those we words that become important. Guys, and then also people who trust and employ talented people will never need to worry about having to take decisions because the decisions are taken where they matter. And I think it's about relationships. Guys, other variations, and these are slightly older, participative leadership is where we sit down with employees and we allow them to participate in decision making. I think the main difference is in terms of that, it really is about empowered decision making. Here, it's about contribution. Yeah, and then the idea of leaderful practice. I think when we think of leaderful practice, it really is when we look at leadership where it happens and where it matters. So it really is more about this idea leadership as a process and a practice. And the key thing is that leadership only matters when it happens in context. We can only assess leadership if it happens within a particular context. So here, it's a shared process, it's collaborative, but it also is that everyone in the organization has a contribution to make. And then you can see the bits of elements that make up leaderful practice. Collectiveness, it really is that in a distributed leadership, leaders are everywhere. A number of people have that ability. The second one is that you're in a team, you're leading a team. Sometimes you're part of the team, sometimes you're leading the team. And then collaboration, I like this idea of co-creation, is that everyone contributes and makes magic in the organization. And then lastly, it is how much we care about our colleagues. It is what we do when one person is struggling or when their work is behind, when they need help. That to me is what is important. Um, the term that springs to mind, but we're not doing that here, is the concept of organizational citizenship, where you step in for other people, where you promote the organization effectively, even when you're not being asked to. And then collective leadership, yeah, again, dynamic. It really is about having leaders everywhere, having leadership positions shift between people. And the key thing is about this formality of it. So you have distributed leadership, and this time this person leads, next time, next time, next time. But again, I think the idea of leadership that I like is this pop-up leadership, that you step up when you need it, that you make a difference, and you take the leadership role when you need it. Okay. Right. Any questions, guys? Any questions? Any comments?